automation. So welcome, Wayne. Thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you with us. I can see you've almost got your slides there. If you could, there, that's it. You got it. Brilliant.
There we go.
Give it another one. There, brilliant. So without further ado, Wayne, over to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And how on earth do I follow that? It's, you know, one of the things I get to do in my role as well is really think about the role of AI, and ethics and bias is just a constant conversation at the moment with my clients. So fascinating panel. So we are definitely going to change gears though. So let me give you a bit of background on myself. I'm conscious we've only got 20 minutes at most. So I'm Wayne Butterfield. I work for a company called ISG Automation at the moment, but my background actually is in the telco space. So I spent 13 years at Telefonica, which is where I first bumped into service desk, and another 2 years at British Telecom. And my role really was about using technology very early on in its adoption curve. I've been very, very fortunate in getting to use technologies like RPA all the way back in 2010, chatbots 2014, online customer service using online communities, using social customer service, using asynchronous messaging very, very early on, much earlier than most other organizations adopted these technologies and capabilities, which means I got my hands really dirty and made loads of mistakes, which is brilliant because that means I've learned a lot, and it means my clients at least don't have to deal with some of the issues that I did very, very early on. So I'm going to start with something that I was quoting a few years ago, really, and I think this is really relevant, whether it's service desk, customer service, or just organizations in general. But you know, for me, the winners in business are not going to be those who use the most technology or roll out the best technological capabilities, but actually it's about those who marry both their technology capabilities and their people, and how their change management programs enable both people and technology to work harmoniously. That is really where I see the future of, you know, service desk, customer service, you name it, really. And I still think, you know, I mentioned that a couple of years ago, and it still really resonates, I think, with both myself and a lot of my clients right now. And also, it's a very scary stroke cool picture. If I think about the role of technology and the technologies that are kind of up and coming right now, I'd say, you know, from a service desk perspective, there isn't really a one size fits all. You know, what we really see in this world of hyper automation is there's three groupings of technology that I think are very relevant, and I'll step through these at a high level. I'll go into them a little more in a lower level, and then I'll provide you a methodology that we follow at ISG in order to help our clients understand what their opportunities may be. And then what I'll do is I'll finish on a few takeaways, shall we say. So 2020, Gartner coined a term called hyperautomation. At the time, I absolutely hated it because I'm sick of analysts thinking that you can add terms and terminology and acronyms to technology and capability and get away with it, because it's all it does, it really confuses the world, really. And hyperautomation for me, for a long time, was very much a confusing statement, because what basically people were referring to as hyperautomation in the market was that it was just lots of robotic process automation. And in reality, lots of robotic process automation is just lots of robotic process automation. It's not hyperautomation. It's just putting lipstick on a pig, really. And so it took me a long time, but what I realized was that if you want to take automation to the next level, what you need to do is you really need to start understanding your business, your department, your processes, not just at an agent level, not just at a conversational level, not just at an SOP level, but really you need to start understanding it at a data level. And that's certainly an area that any area of service really struggles with. They don't struggle with having data, they struggle with having meaningful data. You know, I worked in the contact center for a number of years, and you know, we're swimming in data, but you know what, we're absolutely dead poor in actually having good insight. And that's why this world of hyperautomation for me is really interesting, because if you start to think about using data in order to understand your as-is and your historical performance across a number of different processes, or every process even, and then you really can start to get insight out of your data, which you probably don't necessarily have at the moment. I see process discovery, or automated process discovery, covering three main technology groups: communications mining, process mining, and task mining. And I think in the service desk, there's probably a role for all three of these. And let me just give you kind of a 30-second review on each of these, because some of these may or may not actually be that familiar to you. If we were to look probably at the one in the middle at first, this is probably the one that's got the most traction at the moment. Process mining, again, it's not really a new technology. It's probably been out well over a decade. The market leader is a company called Celonis in this particular space. They've got about 75% of the market, and you know what you will see with process mining is incredibly good and insightful, but only in certain parts of your business and only for certain types of processes. And I usually look at these across a number of different facets, but I think the key one really is elongated processes that often cover multiple people over multiple departments across multiple days. You know, that's where process mining really adds more value, I would say. And for service desk, you may well have those, you know, when you go from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3, some of those real challenges that you're raising. You know, you may well want to see how, you know, cases are flowing through your service desk systems. You may well want to know who is performing better than others. What types of queries are we seeing good resolution on, poor resolution on? So process mining perhaps has a role within service desk. But actually what we would often see in service desk and customer service in a lot of parts of business is task mining. And the difference between a process and a task, for me, a task is one and done. Hey, I'm on the phone, okay, I need my password reset, okay, fantastic, I've now done that for you, thank you very much. Task mining, it's great, okay? What you're really doing in that instance is you're looking at either the actions that the person has taken on the screen, you're looking at some of the underlying clicks that they've made during that task from start to finish. And again, that's giving you some insight into the number of those tasks that are completed, the handle time of those. You know, some of these technologies actually are recording specifically the systems, the clicks, that the agent has been taking. So again, it enables you to have insights and analytics around even tasks that are being completed. Again, right user case, right place, right department, fantastic technology. And then the last one really is about your communications mining. It's about that call, that ticket, that email, and it's really helping you understand and provide an analytical layer across those communications to say, you know, we had this many communications. They were about these 17 topics. On these 3 topics, we saw emails with an average chain of 4.2, or we saw a resolution on X tickets taking 7.4 days. You're getting a view of business intent, so what are people raising, as well as obviously looking then at process mining, task mining, which say, how do we go and resolve those? So it's looking at intent, and then it's enabling you to then marry these technologies together to really understand just your as-is, your process, your historical performance at a data level. And I think that's really important. You know, I spent a decade now in automation, and you know, a lot of organizations go into automating quite blind, very blinkered, right? We've got 10 processes, we're going to create a business case, we're going to create a capability, boom. Oh, we didn't actually create any benefit because they didn't really understand the data behind. And I've seen loads of examples where an SME's opinion of what happens versus the data view of reality, very, very warped, especially because most of the time what we do is we get our most experienced SME. They've probably been doing the same thing for a decade. Guess what? Their mind is warped. What may have happened 8 years ago may be the bit that they think is important, when in reality the world has changed, but they're still stuck, you know, in 2012. We absolutely see that. We spoke about bias earlier on, bias in data. We have bias in experience. And that's one of the challenges that we have to try and overcome as we look at hyper automation. We have to look and get past this bias in our experience of the work that we do. So again, even bias is coming out into the world of automation now. So once we understand our processes at a data level, then what we can really start to think about is the types of technology that are going to be really relevant to us to help automate. Now, the way I look at automation is I'm looking at the characteristics, the human characteristics that we exhibit on a day-to-day basis when dealing with work. And so I try and marry a technology capability to a thing that we do. And so I often refer to intelligent process automation as handwork and headwork. And what I mean by that is, you know, something like robotic process automation is mimicking the keystrokes that a human would take on a keyboard. It's mimicking the movements of their mouse or their tab key. And yet generally it's copying and pasting data from one place to another. Yeah, there's some basic rules around, you know, if, then, or else, but it's mimicking your handwork, right? You can almost do this type of work blind. You know, you don't necessarily have to put a great amount of thought into most of the work that RPA can do. Now, unfortunately, the vast majority of the work that we complete as people doesn't just rely on our hands. It relies on our ability to see something, to read something, to understand something, to solve a problem, to make a decision, to converse even. And so the world of intelligent process automation is not just handwork, it's very much headwork. And it's this combination of technologies that I think is going to be helping service desk to transform into the next level. And then last but not least, and this is what really brings me to a close on this world of hyper automation, is process intelligence. Now, again, one of the things that we tend to see in organizations is they go in, 10 processes, we found 10 tasks that we're going to automate, we automate them, and then that's the end of the story. Now, what I believe is that in order to be really successful in the future, it's not just about what you automate, because with current technology, and even technology that's going to be available over the next 20 years, we're never going to be able to automate everything. I'm a firm believer that there is still absolutely a role for a person, without question, supported by technology, absolutely. And so if we only concentrate our hyper automation efforts on those processes that we automate, at best 20% of work will be automated using these type of technologies. We'll probably get another 10% that's leaned out, and we might get another 20% where systems of record, CRMs, ERPs, etc., increase their capabilities, workflow, we use increased workflow. There's still going to be a decent chunk of work. And so process intelligence really is the continued use of data, text, process analytics to create almost a Fitbit type capability within your organization, so that you know what's going on, when, what changes. You can understand the health of your organization at a process by process level, even those that are not automated. And when you put those together, that for me is hyper automation. So hopefully that kind of helps. So when we think about the challenges within service desk, it's not a one size fits all. There's a group of technologies and capabilities that we are able to invest in And the good news is we shouldn't just have to invest in them in service desk. I mean, unlike other tools, these particular technologies are extremely relevant in other parts of the business. You know, if I look at this, probably kind of breaks it down. I often break down the use of some of these technologies into different parts of your business. You obviously have your back office where unattended robotic process automation has been very prevalent. It's often when we're looking at invoices, maybe application forms, things like that. So you do see a lot of intelligent document processing or OCR, and obviously extracting information from these type of documents is often quite prevalent. So you know, you see those in back office. I don't really see a big use for those really in service desk. However, you know, where I see the synergies are probably in the technologies more towards the right. So if you think about at least frontline, you know, first level support, you know, often it's on the phone, it's often in tickets, very reminiscent of a customer service department where, you know, you're generally trying to understand what the problem is. You could well deal or have some automated support through automation to help you resolve that query. And in some instances, you don't even need a person. And you know, a level of chatbot conversational AI type automation could absolutely be a technology that would or could support people, your end customers, without the need to actually converse with them direct. So very much see that suite of technology being very relevant. Now, when we come into the middle, again, I think as we move into, you know, second line, third line support, and even some first line queries, you know, the role of machine learning. You know, we spoke about, you know, AI and bias earlier on. So machine learning, you know, a core capability, the ability to predict and the ability to find patterns. You know, that's what machine learning is incredibly strong at the moment. And most technologies that are built on the back of machine learning are really doing those two things. They're predicting something, or they are clustering something. They're finding patterns around it. That is incredibly useful. The other one that I think is useful in this particular space as well, certainly for service desk, is cognitive reasoning. Now, this is the codifying of knowledge, and the reason why I think this is really interesting as a technology is, you know, what you tend to find is that the agents on service desk has a pool of knowledge. That pool of knowledge will get them so far. When they're unable to resolve queries, they then go into, you know, a deeper pool of expertise, and post that they may go into an even deeper pool of expertise. And so cognitive reasoning, the codifying of knowledge, really, we spoke earlier on about decisions, you know, decisions and problems being solved as part of hyper automation. Cognitive reasoning is that codifying of knowledge, taking a complex problem and being able to, from that, create an automated way of fixing those problems through the use of knowledge, not necessarily through the use of data. So you kind of see the right-hand side of all of this, like these are the technologies and the capabilities that are either going to be inbuilt into some of your systems. ServiceNow is a great example that has at least got, you know, basic chatbots. You know, there will be assisted automation in ServiceNow. You know, just about every CRM and ERP now has bought an RPA provider, so you're absolutely going to see some of these levels of automation actually just become encompassed in your technologies that you probably already have at the moment anyway. But as I say, as we start to get into some of these more complex queries, you know, we are going to have to really start to leverage machine learning and cognitive reasoning just to help build out those initial and more complex user cases. But again, absolutely, this is still, you know, going back to the cyborg analogy, this is very much still person and technology working hand in hand in the main versus, you know, a technology first, a technology only service desk. I absolutely do not see that in just about any business really. But again, marrying when and where technology should be used versus when and where it's very relevant to have your expertise and your human expertise in the loop is going to be really key to making a great experience for your end customers. So almost last slide now. My boss refers to this as a spaghetti slide. This really is trying to bring in the role of hyper automation and a bit of a methodology, really. Really, it's okay to have all of these technologies. And do you know what? Most organizations are swimming in technology. Really, it's about bringing these things together in a relevant and useful kind of workflow. So really thinking about your business. I mentioned this earlier on. For me, thinking about data has got to be the most important starting point here. Understanding your as is absolutely key to success. I mentioned the kind of, the automated discovery technologies, really thinking about, understanding your tickets, understanding your calls, understanding notes and systems, really just using technology to understand your service desk at a data level, incredibly important. My true one recommendation about where to start, even if you do nothing else, understanding what you are doing at a data level versus an opinion level or a tally chart level, or even a drop down from an agent level. Yeah, password reset. Well, we've got 93% of our queries are password resets. Yeah, it's because it's the first drop down. And more often than not, people actually want to talk to you about more than one thing. It might be about password reset, but it could also be about something else. Can I get a different version of X, Y, and Z? I need access to, A, B, and C system. But more often than not, tools only have one drop down, so you only ever choose one query. So using technology really to understand your problem, and help size your challenge within Service Desk. Use chatbots and levels of automation, self-service to obviously remove queries. So where you've got low-hanging fruit, absolutely. Think about the role that conversational AI, the role that RPA can play in removing those types of queries. And then for the residual, and there always will be a residual. The thing is it 90%? Is it 80%? Is it 70%? We have had an audience poll earlier on, so we know that there's a level of automation that is already here and will be here to stay. But I'm guaranteeing that there is still a level of residual work that ranges from 70% to 90% of effort, even after high levels of automation. But how can we help our people be more efficient so that they are marrying those human skills with an automation? And we see that in customer service, we see that in Service Desk, absolutely. And then last but not least, if you think about all of these things together, so we understand our challenge in the data level, we remove that low-hanging fruit when and where it is relevant, and then we improve the residual through the use of assisted automation, machine learning, cognitive reasoning. And then that really is going to be for the most part where we become most efficient, and most efficient in Service Desk. I think it's a really interesting thing, because there are different KPIs within Service Desk that we don't often see in other parts of the business, certainly shouldn't see in other business cases. The role of Service Desk really for me is about enabling the business to be able to do work. There's not a great deal of other departments where that is your one of your key KPIs, and therefore any business case associated with Service Desk absolutely has to look at different KPIs. Just having a quick look at the time, and I'm conscious that we are very close. So I just want to have four quick takeaways, just so that we take away hopefully something over the last 20 odd minutes. So first thing, not all Service Desk challenges are unique. There are probably already, if you're not already using them, internal capabilities that are extremely useful for your Service Desk transformation. You don't necessarily have to buy many of these technologies yourself. You just need to get yourselves on the roadmap to say, hang on a minute, we've also got problems here. We need some of that technology, or we need you to do to us as you are doing to other departments. So it doesn't always have to be new technology being brought in the business specific to Service Desk. And I'll be honest, certainly at O2, I remember our service desk, it was underfunded. It was in the most horrific part of our entire office, in just like bumped into a corner. It was underinvested in. And so it's all very, very manual. So, you know, there's definitely something here about how can we utilize capabilities that are already available. Mentioned this 3 times already, but 4th time, start with data. Really understand your challenges and your problems. I mentioned this very briefly, business cases. Think about the different metrics, the ones that you are really responsible and targeted against, and obviously think about different ways of being able to produce a business case. You know, systems uptime, you know, enabling our agents to be available to take calls first thing on a morning when they've locked themselves out of systems, you know, every 5, 10, 15 minutes. I mean, you're helping with, you know, customer experience in the back end. You're helping with your agents' availability, their adherence. You know, you have capabilities within Service Desk that you don't just see in other departments. So you have different KPIs that you can assist with. And then finally, I didn't touch upon this one, but the number of customers I've spoken with, clients over the years, where because it's outsourced, and usually, you know, it might be first line, second line, because it's outsourced, it's almost like, it doesn't mean it doesn't cost anything, and it's still an issue. Yes, it might be cheaper, potentially, but it's still a problem. And just being outsourced doesn't mean that we shouldn't be concentrating on it. It's still a problem we should be looking to address, you know, whether it's through the use of automation, whether it's through investment in systems, etc. But I always find it fascinating that we almost forget that there could well be a problem there, because the cost is lying on a spreadsheet. It's not necessarily a group of people sat behind you. And with that, hopefully that's been really useful for the audience, and I will hand back to you guys.
Lovely, that's great, Wayne. Thank you very much indeed. We have got a couple of questions that have come through, and I'll see if we can go through them. The first one is, let me just pick it up. Where are we? There we are, from Martin. And Martin asks, how are things like DevOps and swarming affecting traditional processes? Are they killing off overly complex processes?
Are they killing off overly complex processes? So I'm going to not necessarily talk about overly complex processes. Yeah, I'm going to start with the simple stuff. When I started a decade ago, do you know what? There was a load of low-hanging fruit everywhere. And whether it's DevOps, whether it's Swarm, whether it's Lean, just general process improvement, I think we've absolutely seen a shift in the amount of lower, simple processes that happen across a business, full stop. I think there's a lot more low-hanging fruit a decade ago than what there is now. Are we seeing improvements also in more complex processing? I think it depends on the organization, and it also, I guess, it depends on how complex. But I think there's definitely been a shift and an understanding, and whether it's through improved workflows, whether it's just, you know, investment in process improvement, maybe just more of an awareness. Maybe automation has been a catalyst for many organizations to start thinking about not just the simple stuff, but the complex stuff. But I think there's absolutely been a shift in thinking about work, both simple and complex. And certainly over the last kind of, I would say 3 to 5 years, I've noticed a big difference in the size of opportunity that I come across in organizations. You know, most of the time now, we really are kind of almost picking up scraps versus getting huge, big meals of an opportunity. So I think, you know, DevOps and some, we've got something to play with that as well, but I also think Lean and just general focus on process improvement overall, a bigger focus on process across the organizations had a role to play also.
Thank you for that. And we've got one from Simone as well, who thanked you for the presentation and asks about knowledge management. So funnily enough, Simone, we had a fantastic event on knowledge management, which covered some of this. It sort of crosses over actually in the change of the role of an individual and what one organization in particular was doing there in relation to KCS and moving from an information worker to a knowledge worker because of the roles had changed, because there was less work to do. So Simone asks, is what you're doing often seen by your clients as and incorporating into a business-wide knowledge management strategy? So do they see it as a business-wide knowledge management strategy, or still within the technical area of the business? Because she makes a point about the mind shift has to shift, and I think Simone, you're absolutely right. I think we've seen an awful lot more of, and we are developing that move to what an enterprise really looks like now, what the whole organization looks like. So what do you think about that? Do they see it as a sort of an enterprise knowledge thing, or do they see it as a technical thing?
So I could talk about this for hours. So I think it's a great question, Simone. Most organizations, the issue that they have is that they're underplaying the value of change management. Under change management, I think there's cultural things. There is clearly knowledge. I would say forms part of that. I would say there's too many disjointed parts. This, for me, all of this should be a capability. It shouldn't be a technology play. It should be a capability. It should be enhancing your capability to do work more efficiently, do it more accurately, improve turnarounds, etc., etc. Very rarely have I seen an organization be as, let's say, mature enough to have a knowledge play alongside this. I think it's often seen, at least in the early days, very much as a technology play. But I think there's a great deal of knowledge within an organization, and there's also a great deal of outdated knowledge that's difficult to get a grasp of. Unfortunately, when we are using some of these technologies, natural language processing specifically, you need to really have a great deal of documented knowledge that's accurate, that's accessible, in order for some of these technologies really to make accurate decisions, provide accurate outputs. And I've seen a lot of organizations become unstuck because knowledge management is often, again, another very underfunded area of the business. So yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we could talk a lot about this. I think most organizations have decoupled it, but I think absolutely should be an incredibly important aspect of this. But only those that are most mature and are thinking holistically, I think, have even considered knowledge management as a part of this.
Great. Brilliant. Well, we've run over a little bit, but I think there's an awful lot of value in some of those questions before we go into the break. So, Wayne, thank you very much indeed. Now, just before we go, Wayne, we are going to run one more poll. Now, this alludes to what we've just discussed to some degree. It talks about to what percentage the entire organization, their internal processes are automated. So if you look at unifying stuff, if you look at enterprise service management, if you look at the push to really radically change how an organization sort of fits together to do work,